Nestled in the heart of Scotland, Dunblane is a picturesque town known for its history, its peaceful streets, and a community built on trust. A place where children played freely and doors were left unlocked. But on the morning of March 13, 1996, this small town would witness an event so horrifying that it would send shockwaves across the world. A massacre that would claim the lives of 16 innocent children and their teacher, forever altering the course of British history. Dunblane is a town of just over 8,000 residents located near Stirling. It's the kind of place where everybody knows each other. A town steeped in tradition, famous for its medieval cathedral and its sense of community. But in 1996, Dunblane was not known for its history. It became known for tragedy. To understand what happened that day, we must look at the man responsible. Thomas Hamilton.
He was well known in Dunblane, often described as a loner, a bit of a weirdo, a classic nerd complete with anorak. The local kids even had a nickname for him. They called him Mr. Creepy. But he had another side to him too. He could appear respectable, dressed in shirt and tie, and he could be quite convincing and persuasive. Many people did believe he was the innocent victim of unsubstantiated gossip. Over the years, his passion for being around young boys had not diminished, and he fought a tireless campaign to set up and run youth groups, and to be reinstated in the Scouts. Hamilton organised and ran various boys' clubs, but the usual complaints soon surfaced, and over time many of his clubs were shut down. Although many people suspected Hamilton of being a closet paedophile, nothing was ever proven, and having his clubs shut down solely on the basis of rumours without proof enraged him. Feelings of resentment and persecution were obviously building up within him. An excerpt from a letter he wrote to the Queen gives a glimpse into the mind of a man who felt he was being unjustly treated. I have been involved with the organisation of boys' sports clubs for over 20 years, and the rumours circulated by officials of the Scout Association have now reached epidemic proportions across Central Region. As well as my personal distress and loss of public standing, this situation has also resulted in the loss of my business and ability to earn a living. Indeed, I cannot even walk the streets for fear of embarrassing ridicule. All those years of resentment, unfulfilled ambitions, and self-pity were about to explode in a way that no one could have foreseen.
The morning of March 13, 1996. It was a normal Wednesday morning. Parents kissed their children goodbye, expecting them to return home later that day. Inside Dunblane Primary School, students were settling into their routines. For a group of 5- and 6-year-olds, the day began in the gymnasium with their teacher, Gwen Mayor, leading their morning PE lesson. But outside, Thomas Hamilton was preparing for something unthinkable. At approximately 9:30 a.m., Hamilton approached the school, armed with 4 handguns and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. He entered through a side door and made his way to the gymnasium. What happened next would unfold in mere minutes, but leave scars that would last a lifetime.
Upon entering the gym, Hamilton was confronted by Eileen Harold, the PE teacher in charge of that morning's lesson. Hamilton's response was to immediately open fire, first shooting and seriously wounding Eileen Harold, and then firing rapidly into the gym. Teacher Gwen Mayor was shot and killed instantly, and PE assistant Mary Boll was shot in the head and legs, but incredibly survived, bravely shielding other wounded children as they sought shelter in the large store cupboard located adjacent to the gym. Hamilton was firing indiscriminately at the children in the gym, wounding almost all of them and killing one child outright. Having shot everyone he could see, Hamilton advanced upon a group of 16 wounded, terrified children who were gathered near the centre of the gym, whereupon he shot them all again at point-blank range. An older pupil, walking past the gym outside, stopped to look through the window to see what was happening. Hamilton saw him and opened fire. Luckily he missed, and the pupil, wounded by flying glass, ran to raise the alarm. Thomas Hamilton continued to shoot, breaking windows and aiming at any moving thing that he saw. Next, he briefly left the gym by the fire doors and headed outside, firing at some of the older pupils he saw in an adjacent classroom, and firing into the school library, where he wounded another staff member. Hamilton then re-entered the gym, took a fresh pistol from his belt, put the gun in his mouth and shot himself. He died instantly.
In the chaotic aftermath, emergency responders arrived to a scene of unimaginable horror. The gymnasium was silent, but the devastation was clear. 16 children and their teacher were dead. 15 others were injured, some critically. For the parents, the waiting was agony. Some received the news no mother or father should ever hear. Outside, the world watched in shock. News of the massacre spread rapidly, leaving the UK in mourning.
In the small city of Dunblane in central Scotland, 16 children were murdered. A former scout leader with a grudge walked into their primary school gymnasium with 4 handguns and without warning opened fire.
My mum had a toy shop in the high street at the time. I was working in there that morning and she came bursting through the door and said there had been a shooting at the school, and I didn't believe her. I mean, you wouldn't. And then the phone rang in the shop and the other lady who worked in the shop answered it, and it was her daughter saying she'd heard on the radio that there had been a shooting at the primary school. And I literally grabbed my car keys, I jumped in the car.
And I remember just standing there thinking, do I go with her? Do I try? And then I thought, no, she's running too fast. I can't possibly keep up with her.
I drove towards the school, couldn't get near it because every parent in the town was doing the same thing. Ran up to the school gates. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody was giving any information, but there were ambulances in the school grounds. We knew something serious had happened. We were relocated from the school gates into various houses and hotels and waiting for information, and probably 3 or 4 hours. And I was sharing a chair with a girl who I'd grown up with. When they announced which class had been affected, she jumped up, and it was one of her daughter's class. I remember sitting back down in the chair and not being able to move. It was that complete and utter relief that Andy and Jamie were safe. Eventually we were allowed to collect our children from the school, and when I got my kids out, and it was orchestrated well that my 2 came out together. When I got them into the car, they had no idea what had happened. They had managed to keep everything calm for them.
We weren't told anything until our parents came to collect us, and then they would tell us what's happened. And I mean, obviously it was a awful day.
Just try and keep everything as normal as possible. And of course, I was very upset. As you can imagine, having a toy shop, I knew an awful lot of these young 5-year-olds.
I stopped the car and I explained to them what had happened. They had both attended boys' clubs that Thomas Hamilton had run. Of course, they knew him. I'd given him lifts to the station. They were just, why would he do something like that? And of course, you have no answers. I was grateful at the time that they were too young to really understand the enormity of what had happened. It had a massive effect on all of us who lived there. I could have lost my children that day.
All the time, all I could think was how lucky we were to have our grandsons safe and sound.
It really made me want to grasp life and give my kids the best opportunities that they could. You never would imagine that you would live through something like that. Never. It makes you realise how precious life is.
We didn't know what was going on. We weren't allowed to know. And when I was going to the toilet, when we were allowed out only to go to the toilet, I saw these gunshots in the gym window. And we didn't know really what was going on. And someone told me that Mrs. Harold had been shot, and that's all I knew.
As the town of Dunblane grieved, the country demanded action. The Snowdrop Campaign was launched by parents and activists calling for a complete ban on handguns in the UK. The movement gained overwhelming support, and within a year, British gun laws were under review. By 1997, new laws were passed, banning private ownership of handguns. It was one of the most significant firearm restrictions in British history, one that remains in effect to this day. The pain of Dunblane will never fully heal, but from the tragedy came change that has prevented similar events from happening again in the UK. Today, a memorial garden stands in Dunblane, honoring those lost. The town carries its sorrow, but also its resilience. And the memory of those 16 children and their teacher, Gwen Mayor, lives on, not just in the hearts of their loved ones, but in a country that vowed never to let this happen again. The Dunblane Massacre was a tragedy that should never have happened. It was a moment in history that forced a nation to confront its laws, its protections, and its responsibilities. But most of all, it was a moment that left families shattered and a town forever changed. Let us never forget Dunblane. Let us never forget the children.